I love Saturday morning PSAs, which is odd because when you're a kid, you don't think much about them, do you? You're watching your favorite show, and then the commercials come on, and then all of a sudden, there's a PSA about noses. Very weird, that one. Or Gilbert Gottfried as a smoke detector.
Cause when they smoke, they may be fire.
Because how could he get more annoying? As a kid, we just treat them as normal commercials. But when you're an adult and you stumble upon them on YouTube, you instantly have this nostalgic feeling because you're instantly brought back to the days of your youth. Well, if you grew up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, that is. Especially the ones on ABC, CBS, and NBC. Because those were almost like mini shows themselves. And it is these that we are going to look at. Well, with the exception of Schoolhouse Rock. Great series, but it's too well known and would need its own video. With that said, let's take a look at those drug discouragers, those career-changing creators, those positive promoting productions. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, I am Tunamp, and this is Saturday Morning Public Service Announcements. Before we get started, I publish content of questionable quality whenever. If you like what you see, please hit that subscribe button. Or subscribe anyway, I'm not picky. You can keep up with me on social media or ring that bell to be notified when a new video comes out. With that said, let's do this thing. So I'm going to put these in categories of topics. You know, health, money, jobs, etc. And sure, ABC is the king, but almost all Saturday morning lineups had their own handcrafted PSAs, with the exception of UPN, and that's because they were on Sundays. Yeah, I'm not really sorry for that joke. So let's get started with...
In the United States is right here in Miami at the Hialeah racetrack. In 1930, 12 pairs of the birds.
In the news, the bus of the future goes bust. They were supposed to help carry commuters into the 21st century, but in many big cities, these buses aren't carrying anyone, anywhere. We'll be back with busted buses in the news.
1971 in the news. Well, CBS never really had Saturday morning PSAs. Well, there is in the news, and I guess they tried. And what I mean by trying is they found news reports that CBS thought would appeal towards kids and would have a reporter who sounds bored out of his mind reading them. News reports in general are kind of a mood killer for kids, since kids view them as boring. No matter how hard you try, news is always a channel changer for kids. Unless they're weird. So having a proper reporter on Saturday morning TV doing a news report to try to educate kids is not really well thought out. Well-meaning? Sure. Good idea? Not so much. Get used to hearing well-meaning in this video. Nick News kind of helped improve this format by talking to kids and explore kids' interest. Unfortunately, YouTube has shown that this format could be done in a better, more entertaining way. But there is some history here. CBS and Hanna-Barbera produced a PSA series featuring Josie and the Pussycats called In the Know, something I have no clips for. Eventually, Josie was phased out in favor of the live action In the News. In the News broadcast from 1971 to 1986 and was revived in the 1997-98 season during the year CBS gave up on Saturday mornings. So what happened after In the News was pulled? Well, the cartoons on CBS were known to have their own PSAs within their shows, but I don't think they were forced by CBS. The ones I remember the most was the Popeye PSAs and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Turtle Tips.
Next, another interesting story that's in the news.
I'm Laura Croft, and I'm from Glendale, California.
Laura's question on Ask NBC News in a moment.
Ask NBC News. Later on, NBC would produce Ask NBC News, where kids who, I'm guessing, were force-fed the questions to ask Boring McBoringson, who would answer the question. Did we really have this much trouble finding someone to connect with kids? I mean, at least the reporter sounds more interested than the In the News guy, but we're still talking about the news here. Who are we trying to target with these anyway? The kids or their parents? These kids do not look like they care at all when asking these questions. What did NBC do? Go to a school and point out some kids and say, "Would you like to be on TV? Here's a question to ask." I understand what they're trying to do. It's just, it's news. Sometimes they would have a cartoon character from one of the shows to introduce the segment. It's still news though.
For 200 years, the United States Constitution has been committed to the freedom of the individual.
The Metric Marvels, Meter Man, Liter Leader, Super Celsius, and Wonder Grab. Metric superheroes, fighting to stamp out metric ignorance and introduce the system that rules the world.
1978, The Metric Marvels. Now, I've talked about Schoolhouse Rock earlier, but apparently NBC had their own version of the series from the same company. But there is a reason why it's not as popular, and that is, well, the name speaks for itself. They were the Metric Marvels. These cartoons came out in 1978 and was intended to teach kids about the metric system. Oh, Jimmy Carter, you're so silly. So the idea was to use these cartoons and other PSAs to gradually get kids and adults used to the metric system. This program was set up by the US Metric Board. The problem is, of course, Americans didn't want to use the metric system. And with only 7 shorts and nothing else to rotate in, and on top of the US Metric Board disbanding 4 years after the shorts premiered, they were short-lived. Also, I don't have any clips from the shorts. We have the bumpers from the same year, from the same company that did the shorts, but yet we don't have the actual shorts. How does that happen?
Power Ranger!
You guys sure you want to start a fight?
We were just doing what the Power Rangers would do. Not.
1974, The Bod Squad. The Bod Squad is a handful of PSAs that talk about food and hygiene. Pretty much take care of your body themes. They focus on brushing your teeth with mud mouth, avoid getting the munchies, and make sure you at least eat something at the start of your day. And then there is Nutty Gritty, which is a PSA about making trail mix. My favorite part is when a bunch of nuts and what looks like a Hershey Kiss starts eating the trail mix. I guess they like eating themselves? On top of that, they remind kids to brush their teeth at the end, along with the continuous singing of Join the Bod Squad.
Do something good for your bod and brush your teeth after snack. Join the Bod Squad. Join the Bod Squad.
There are some other shorts in the same vein as these. I remember the Drowning Food song, which is a crap message, by the way.
'Cause food's so much better. It's practically plain.
It tastes better when it's plain? You are full of crap. Well, taste is subjective, but to me, mayo, ketchup, anything that adds more flavor to it can't be that bad. I don't remember the chopper back then. It's a PSA about strengthening your jaw, but when I watch it now, it's great. There are others made by the same advertising agency as Schoolhouse Rock's. Beans and rice, water, love does not add weight, etc., etc. Like the Bod Squad, they focus on eating and staying healthy. And like the Bod Squad and Schoolhouse Rocks, they're really creative. I particularly like beans and rice.
What take it from the chopper? Hey, the chopper, yeah, that's me. If you want to have great choppers, exercise your teeth.
Bang, bang, bang. Oh, howdy, partner. Time for timer.
1976, Time for Timer. Probably the most well-known group of PSAs on ABC outside of Schoolhouse Rock. Time for Timer is PSAs about food. Timer does have an interesting history as he was introduced in 1973 through a couple of ABC's after-school specials. The Incredible Indelible Magical Physical Mystery Trip and the Magical Mystery Trip Through Little Red's Head. Timer was voiced by Len Maxwell for the first special and Len Renrib for Little Red and the PSAs. Advertising himself as the body's timer, Timer is a magical creature that promotes healthy eating and hygiene. Like most ABC PSAs, Timer would sing and dance and had some catchy songs like Hankering for a Hunk of Cheese, Sunshine on a Stick, and so much more.
Could you make me a banana?
Okay, you're a banana.
You enjoy. Think things you're good at, hobbies you like, even if some of them seem a little far out. Then see if you can spot some ways to earn money in your list.
No. Who, me? Let's go. Oh. Get this.
1976. Bet you didn't know. I'm going to be honest, I hate these things. I'm not sure why that is. These feature some kind of sketch that eventually involves the phrase, bet you didn't know, where the smart aleck person goes on to tell you a fact about something. Or, in Animaniacs terms,
useless fact.
The facts part seemed to come out of nowhere and no one really asked about why donuts have holes or where zits come from. And most of the time, the person telling the fact kind of feels like intrusive or a nuisance. It's like they are pretending to help the situation, but in reality, not really. A person in a sneezing fit doesn't want to hear about what causes sneezes. They want help. At least give them a tissue before you give a fun fact that no one asked you for. In the end, these are well-meaning and educational, but they are still
useless fact.
1988. Fun facts. So this was during a time where I was exclusively watching ABC on Saturday mornings. They had a great lineup, with the exception of Benny and Cecil. Hey ABC, you might want to have advertised that show. Too bad you didn't. So ABC's lineup at the time was Benny and Cecil, an hour of Winnie the Pooh, a pup named Scooby-Doo, Slimer and the Real Ghostbusters, the Bugs Bunny and Tweety Show, and I think an hour of Weekend Special. That last one doesn't matter because I never watched the Weekend Special. Most of the time it was preempted by sports anyway. Yuck. But during this time, there were some PSAs that were done by comedian Yakov Smirnoff. Please tell me that he got famous for being funny, and not just because of his accent and funny laugh. Please tell me that this guy is actually funny, because he wasn't in the PSAs. Because the fun fact PSAs start off with a pun joke, then we have the fun fact, and then we get another joke, and he finishes off by laughing at his own joke. It's not terrible, it's just not funny. But honestly, the fun facts are harmless. It's an interesting route that they took with this one. Again, this is one of those ones that lasted only for one season, and then it disappeared for the next season. I do, however, like the combination of the cut and paste photo mixed in with the animation. It worked out pretty good. You know, maybe I should look up some of Yakov Smirnoff's material. What am I saying? I'm complaining about a guy not being funny in a children's PSA. Although Animaniacs was made for kids, and that made me laugh all the time.
Team got it instead. She was bragging about how great she was. She goes, I was so fine, Ellen, I had them lose their seat.
Out there! Someone needs Dr. Henry's Emergency Lessons for People.
1979. Dr. Henry's Emergency Lessons for People, or HELP. First aid tips. Dr. Henry's tips are simple enough to remember, but they are very entertaining to watch. The announcer reminds me of the one from Rocky and Bullwinkle. A lot of puns. You can't beat a name like I'm a klutz. Didn't Bart prank Moe in an episode of Simpsons with that name? I'm not gonna look that up. Are you crazy? What is that, over 400, 500 episodes? In a way, with Dr. Henry, an accident happens, everyone overreacts, and Dr. Henry shows up to calm the situation. He explains what to do when small needs a first aid, and then goes on to say if the situation is worse, go to the emergency room. The credits are also interesting, as they preview the next short in the series.
Coming soon, Rock Bottom says...
When you think you have heard every name pun in the book, Kim Possible, Just in Time. You know, the ones where names are pretty much random phrases. And when you think you have heard every single one of them, I give you...
Will he survive? Will he survive? Will he survive?
My word, that is awesome. And kind of suspenseful. From the clips I have seen of Willie is placed into a dire predicament and he starts to overreact to it. And then he stops to think, how do I get out of it? Like keeping change on hand to call a ride when you miss the bus, and go to the neighbor's house when you lock yourself out of your house. Yeah, they are kind of outdated, seeing that payphones are almost not a thing anymore. Same with landlines. Still fun to watch though.
Will he survive? Will he survive? Will he survive?
Sing a song, what kind of jobs am I
to spend their dough without their common sense. They're the dough nuts.
1981, The Donuts. While I do agree that teaching a child smart spending habits is a good idea, I'm just not sure what the donuts presented are smart spending habits. I mean, returning items after you break them? Don't buy brand name clothes, even though they may last longer than off-brands? Not testing products in the store before you buy them? What store does that? And what products don't have instructions? Man, the donuts are outdated. While I do appreciate the effort, the subject content is questionable at best. Schoolhouse Rocks tackled the subject of spending and saving better with Money Rocks. The donuts are another PSA that falls into the meanwhile category.
If you take the time to read just how things are guaranteed, you'll know how to get your dough back if they break.
How's about a little kiss? I got roast beef in my teeth, got some chicken too. Ouch! That's a cat.
Computers are coming your way.
Computers? For paying bills?
Mothers too.
Bah, humbug.
Wow. Let me try it.
To have some fun or pass a quiz, just follow this computer whiz. Scooter Computer and Mr. Chips, they have the answers at their fingertips.
Scooter Computer and Mr. Chips and the Computer Critters. I'm lumping these two together because they're basically the same thing, except that Scooter Computer is set to song. It's learning computers and their functions, and much like a computer, they were outdated in 2 weeks. Unfortunately, that quote is true. While other PSAs in Schoolhouse Rock focuses on math, science, history, safety, and money management, this one dealt with technology. Technology is a platform that is constantly changing, and for a cartoon that takes around 6 months to produce, that cartoon may be outdated when it comes out. Another problem is, these cartoons are hardly needed as kids have an amazing fascination with technology. They grew up on it. The ones who really need to learn about computers are adults. Well, not adults nowadays. Adults back in the 80s. And the older generations today. Now, the feel of the Computer Critters is they feel like they're explaining more to the adults in the cartoons than they are to kids. By the way, the Critter family raises so many questions. Like, how does a rabbit and a squirrel give birth to a cat and a raccoon? And where does the fox, dog, and crocodile fit in with this family? I like the Computer Critters better than Scooter Computer simply because they did a better job of explaining computer programs and devices. That, and I can't stand Mr. Chip's voice. Now, Scooter Computer is technically the 5th part of Schoolhouse Rocks. It lies between Science Rocks and Money Rocks. Again, it's very amusing to see where the public interest in computers started in the 80s to where they are today. And like it or not, those little technical gadgets the kids enjoy today that we don't understand or don't want to understand are pretty much here to stay. I think these PSAs said it best.
We're the computer generation.
And they were right.
Yeah, I don't want to break my neck. Just go for it, dude. Go for it, dude. Go for it, dude. Go for it.
Somebody says I... Don't pout. Check it out. Zach's gonna show you what work's about.
1984, Zach of All Trades. A very fun look at finding future careers, and they were sung by singer Luther Vandross. Zach would pop out of a stream of music and sing about how to find a job, usually based off of your talents and what you would like to do. Ha! If only it was that simple. But it's a good starting point. Most of the songs are catchy and memorable, with songs like Future Blob, The Name Game, and Jack and Jill. And hey, and the series composer Elliot Lawrence was nominated for a Daytime Emmy Award for Outstanding Music Composition in a Children's Program in 1984.
Do your job, plan for a future job, and you won't fear the mean of future job.
Somewhere, out there, someone needs high-class Hudson's earning lessons for people.
1982, High-Class Hudson's Earning Lessons for People, or HELP. This is in the same vein as Zach of All Trades. High-Class Hudson's Earning Lessons for People, or HELP, is a PSA about a guy helping people find a job or a career based off of their talents. I've only seen one of these, and it is the same as most problem-solving PSAs. A character needs help with a conflict. Another character, this time Hudson, comes out and helps, and then the conclusion arrives. I like Zach of all trades better, but this PSA is better for the younger crowd.
You're right on the money!
Kids WB presents, you see a person you might want to be those crazy careers.
1995. Crazy careers. Well, in terms of long-term PSAs, Kids WB pretty much got nothing. Except for one. Kids WB had a PSA called Crazy Careers, where they would look at different jobs and song. They really make sense since every kid has the what I want to be when I grow up syndrome. And they describe these jobs perfectly in song with familiar characters like the Warners, Tweety, and Michigan J. Frog. And who is better to write these songs than Randy Rogel, the composer who wrote some of Animaniacs' most well-known songs. Now, did Kids WB rely on Animaniacs too much when it comes to their programming? Yeah. The WB incorporated them and Peaky and the Brain so much into their advertising for the first 3 years. Now, I think Crazy Careers may have only lasted 1 year, maybe 2. There were about 20 of these PSAs. The jobs ranged from factory workers to tugboat captains. It's really nice to see them go into a different direction with these, and Kids WB never really did any more PSAs. They had something called Top Tunes, which are pretty much what we call anime music videos today, and then they went into some kind of weird kids pranking fad that didn't last too long. Kids WB did a lot of creative things, just not with PSAs.
That's a song and now so long from Crazy Careers.
Dad, with a database management system.
A data what?
It's a computer program that helps you organize information.
I'm Captain O.G. Readmore, a reading kind of cat. Read a book like me, you'll soon agree that reading is where it's at.
1983. Captain O.G. Readmore. I don't know why, but Captain O.G. Readmore felt like an unofficial mascot of ABC Saturday mornings. Well, in the 80s and early 90s anyway. I guess it was because he was always there and was always memorable. Readmore was introduced in 1983, and in 1984 he was the puppet host for ABC's Weekend Special. But he would also appear in cartoon form in different shorts for the Weekend Special, as well as PSAs. His PSAs would start out with a catchy musical cue, and the captain would perform a song and dance, encouraging viewers to read. And then he would finish the PSA with a little tap dance. Again, these were really entertaining, and the captain lasted while the Weekend Special was still airing, so pretty much up until Disney bought ABC. So that was 13 years. Michigan J. Frog didn't even last 10 years as the Kids WB mascot. So that is kind of impressive. Again, Captain Old Gangster Readmore wasn't officially ABC's Saturday morning mascot, and his shorts were produced in maybe in the time frame of a few years, even though there were some newer ones later on, but he still had a big presence on the network. His voice was usually provided by legendary voice actor Frank Welker.
So no matter where you're going, don't forget your book, okay?
Hey guys, thanks for getting this far into the video. We are not done yet. If you like what you see so far, give us a thumbs up and subscribe. I also want to thank my Patreons for their support of content of questionable quality. With that said, let's continue on.
Freezer is you make it in the freezer, and nothing could be easier to fix. Now just watch as I go through it.
Hi, I'm Mr. T, and I'll be right back with One to Grow On.
1983, One to Grow On. Now this is one I remember from NBC. After every cartoon or kids show, NBC would have these PSAs featuring celebrities that kids would barely know from their favorite NBC shows. They would start out with a sketch, and then they would pause the conflict or when the problem happens. A celebrity will talk to the audience and give instructions to help resolve the problem, and then the sketch continues. It's very by the numbers but very informative. Sometimes they feel like it is more important for the adults to know than the kids, such as keeping important numbers by the phone, or right now on the fridge where kids can see it, because you know, cell phones. We need stuff like this to come back, starting with why you should not swallow Tide Pods. Can we bring back Mr. Yuck? One to Grow On ran for 6 years from 1983 to 1989.
And that's One to Grow On.
Oy, these PSAs. Okay, I know these are one of the more popular of the PSAs, but I like One to Grow On better because these feel like they're yelling at you. With One to Grow On, you are actually put into the scenario. You learn by example. You don't get that with The More You Know. You get who I think is a celebrity talking to the camera and telling you what not to do. Some aren't even teaching as they are bringing awareness. They are not as fun, not as educational, and they are more in your face. Between this and One to Grow On, this feels less kid-oriented and really less effective. I guess it doesn't matter because 3 years later, NBC dropped all children's programming and focused on teen NBC. Interestingly enough, NBC has a new Saturday morning lineup by Litton called The More You Know. So glad NBC let them use that.
Because everybody can make a mistake.
And now a message totally for kids.
1990. Totally Kids and the Totally Kids Detective Agency. I've covered these before in my History of Fox Kids series, but they are worth a mention. Live-action PSAs that actually appeal towards kids. They started when Fox Kids started in 1990 and lasted until the fall of 1997. They were kind of like One to Grow On, where they would have a sketch with a kid getting into a conflict, and then they would pause the conflict and John Walsh and the kids from the detective agency would discuss and intervene. Later on, Fox would ditch the detective agency in favor of short stories and sketches. These PSAs dealt with not putting your name on your shirt, to overeating, to bullying, and teenage parenting. And Fox did it in the most entertaining way possible. NBC may have done it first, but Fox Kids did it best. These are the ones I remember the most, and that's simply because I watched a lot of Fox Kids in the afternoon. Of course, there are the music videos, which are not as memorable, although that individual song by the Murmurs is an earworm. They sound like a goat when they sing Make. Make!
Don't you think that we can make it better? Don't you think that we can make it better?
And now a message from the Power Rangers.
1993. Message from the Power Rangers. Now this is kind of smart since the kids know these characters. The original 6 and Adam, Aisha, and Rocky were in all of these, along with Bulk and Skull. They're the same premise as the other PSAs. Conflict, Rangers intervene, resolution. Fox Kids always had the smartest writing, sketches, and how to talk to kids. And they also had an advantage. They had more exposure since they were also on weekdays.
Nothing beats the power of determination.
Check yourself.
1997. Check Yourself. Fox Kids followed up Totally Kids with a group of PSAs called Check Yourself in 1997. It was more of the same as Totally Kids. There's a conflict, a musical number of how to deal with the conflict, and resolution. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it, since it's the same premise as Totally Kids, just with a different name.
Fox Kids rule!
The Super Friends. ABC also had health and safety tips from the Super Friends during the show's run. However, the only ones I could find during the commercials on ABC was from the 1985-86 season on ABC. These PSAs might have been detached from earlier seasons of the show and were repackaged to air during commercial breaks. The Super Friends weren't the only ones that featured characters from ABC series. There was the Flintstone Kids talking about seatbelt safety. And then there were the Littles talking about voting. What is the target audience for that show again? Oh, go tell your parents to vote, because it's that simple. At least when Kids WB did it, they had fun with it.
We put the right mouse into the White House, 'cause he's qualified, my friend, to rule the world. He'll cut the tax, he'll save the trees, he'll reduce the price of cheese. He's a fighting son of a gun, and when it all is said and done, they'll agree in both the Senate and the House
that the best man for the job
is a mouse. A brain is a terrible thing to waste.
This has been a political announcement for the campaign to put a brain in the White House.
But there are other PSAs that really weren't part of any network. Noses. I don't know why I like this one so much. Part of it might have to do with the visuals because they are great, and the other part might have to do with the fact that it was narrated by Eric Idle of Monty Python fame. And then there is Trees Are Terrific from the Arbor Day Foundation. Boy, Carly Cardinal never went anywhere. Perhaps it's because he can't sing?
Sometimes people take for granted about the best things ever planted, but they should be enchanted, should appreciate their trees.
Carly was created by the National Arbor Day Foundation to educate about trees. Unfortunately, the commercials I saw as a kid cut the PSA down to the last 10 seconds. I'm not sure if this was done for time, but it might have been a good thing because, again, Carly can't sing, which is odd for a bird. Truth be told, a lot of these PSAs reach into weekday syndication as well, like Woods the Owl, McGruff the Crime Dog, Smokey the Bear, and Louie the Lightning Bug. However, there are some PSAs from syndication that I remember watching exclusively on Saturday mornings, and a group of them were the Looney Tunes PSAs. Yeah, you kind of forgot! Looney Tunes was the king of Saturday mornings for the 60s, 70s, and 80s, so it made sense to have them in some PSAs. However, these PSAs were odd and felt off at times. Part of it was sometimes the characters were acting out of character. After all, we're used to Bugs and Daffy intentionally setting fires, not preventing them. However, when the animation budget allowed it, the characters could act a little goofy and off the wall. But another reason why they fell off is because of Mel Blanc. These were done in the 1980s, and it is very noticeable that Mel's voice doesn't sound like it used to be when he originally played these characters.
Hey, what are you doing with them digging tools?
Who, me? Oh, I'm gonna get rich. I'm gonna dig for buried treasure.
Buried treasure? Give me that map.
Ladies and gentlemen, an ode to the amendments of the U.S. Constitution.
But that is understandable. Mel was in his 70s at the time, and he did smoke. Of course, his voice is not going to sound like it was in the 40s and 50s. Heck, look up Tom Kenny and Mark Hamill. SpongeBob doesn't sound nearly as energetic as he used to be when the series first started.
I call it a rainboger. It contains all the colors of the rainbow.
Listen to the Joker now and then go back to the old Batman the Animated Series Joker.
He's ripping me off. I'll protest. Yeah, I'll sue. Then I'll rip his lungs out. And I will, too.
You're a big star. The studios will pay plenty of simoleons to get you back.
Sounds a little rougher now, doesn't he? That's what you get with age. Your voice isn't going to sound the same, but at least all three of these actors were able to produce new characters that would match their voice in their older years, as well as playing their older ones. Getting back to the PSAs, the Looney Tunes had some great ones. There were a few done with the Shriners Hospital with burn and fire prevention, and of course, the Constitution PSAs. Now I believe that these aired exclusively on ABC. Yeah, there were a number of these things in the 80s where the Looney Tunes would take a look at the Constitution, from the amendments to anyone could be president and more. It's really kind of sad when you realize that the only female Looney Tunes characters they could have used for the anyone could be president PSA is the cat that Pepe Le Pew stalks, Petunia Pig, Granny, and Miss Prissy. You know, characters that tend to be pushed to the back. Well, there is Honey, Cookie, and Roxy. But the question would have been in the 80s, who dat? Yeah, Honey wasn't everything Tiny Toons made her out to be. And too bad Dot Warner and Slappy the Squirrel were not really a thing back then, despite what Animaniacs tells us. Later on, ABC would show Discover the World with Bugs Bunny. This was in 1992, after Mel Blanc passed. His replacement sounded okay, I guess. This PSA would show clips of the old classic Looney Tunes cartoons while Bugs would narrate about the sights of the world. It was kind of lazy.
The Constitution works for everyone, even kids.
By this time, you may have noticed a theme with ABC, and I think it started with the fun facts with Yakov Smirnoff. And that is, they would have custom PSAs for 1 year and then scrap them for some new PSAs. 1990 had the Fosse philosophy. A bunch of hip and witty kids with attitudes talking to each other. Not really anything of substance. This is back when TV stations thought that every kid acted and dressed like the Fresh Prince. I can't believe the bumpers lasted for 2 years. And then there was the America's Funniest Kids, based off of the America's Funniest People series. Say what you want about the show. What? I'm not gonna stop you. At least we got host Arlene Solkin as Harley Quinn later on. One more Batman the Animated Series mention and I get a bingo! If my bingo card only had 4 spaces on it. So America's Funniest Kids are just kids telling jokes. Not really a PSA. Then there were the Toy Story treats, which were little bits ABC played during the first full season after Disney bought ABC. They aired in the 96-97 season. Not really PSAs, but they are worth a mention. Same thing with the jokes from Little Clowns of Happy Town. Yep, worth a mention. That's all they're getting. Now, 96-97 was a bad year for ABC Saturday mornings as they dropped 50% of their shows for the following season. I really wish Toy Story treats stuck around for one Saturday morning, but instead, we got...
Hi, I'm Professor Chris Williams. Did you know that Mount Kilimanjaro is an extinct volcano? And yet it was also known as the Mountain of Cold Devils because of its 2 snow-capped mountains. Hey, what's up with that?
First, buddy, no one cares who you are. Second, these are pretty much fun facts without the fun. Even Yakov Smirnoff's fun facts were at least somewhat funny. This is kind of boring and just there. So in conclusion, I think there's an important question that needs to be asked. Why do these PSAs exist? I don't recall a government mandate stating that networks need to have PSAs. Well, at least not in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Anyway, while it is true that not every commercial slot was bought up by an ad company, those spots could have been easily filled up by a PSA from a third party, such as the Ad Council. But the networks didn't take that route. Instead, they made PSAs of their own, which means they took time, they took effort, and they used resources to create these PSAs. All things considered, that is impressive. Sure, some of the animation isn't all that great. Sure, some of the messages can be a little condescending. But most of the time, they are informative. They are impressed, and the most impressive thing is the networks did put the effort into making these. It shows that these networks cared. And amazingly enough, they didn't have to do this, but they did. They created something that we in the 70s, 80s, and 90s would remember and cherish from our childhood. And while yes, it's a nostalgic trip, it's that effort that I wish networks like Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, and Disney would put into their PSAs these days. Instead of, having a PSA about seatbelts using clips from the Cars movies. Cars don't use seatbelts. They're cars. And while some of these PSAs may be outdated, that still doesn't change the fact that we enjoy them all the same. Remember, kids, one simply does not judge a cartoon by what decade it is made, but by whether or not that cartoon entertained you. I'm Toonamp. Thanks for watching.
Thanks to these airbags here, this job is now a piece of cake, Claire.
But then...
Yeah, I'll tell you something, partner. I just might stick around a few more years.
But then...
No more dashboard du jour or Vince under glass, huh?
But Vince... Even with airbags, Vince, you still gotta remember to buckle your safety belt.
Now you tell me.
You could learn a lot from a dummy. Buckle your safety belt.